Okay, well, hello, everyone. We are going to start our webinar in just a couple moments. We're going to give people time to get in the room. But while we do that, we could tell you a little bit about ourselves. Allison, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Murdoch. I am working with the SaaStr team on sponsor marketing. And I want to say first, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your support and your commitment to the SaaStr community. And we're really excited to tell you about what we're planning for this fall. And so I'm going to turn over in just a minute a lot of the presentation to Amelia, who we just heard from, the VP of Events and Marketing at SaaStr. But as we get into what we're going to cover today, and perhaps Amelia, if you're ready, we can go to the next slide. I'll walk you through just some of the high points. We do want to leave a lot of time for your questions at the end, so we'll be mindful that we're starting just 2 minutes after 10, but we'll leave at least 15 minutes for all your comments. So the first thing we're going to cover today is the digital events calendar for the rest of the year. We'll touch a little bit on 2021. And we'll take you through some of the numbers and how our community has grown despite what's happening in the world and what you can expect from digital events. We'll also cover a new offering we have called Hyper Workshops, which are as cool as it sounds. And then the content for the 2 events this fall. And then finally, we'll wrap with a kind of a 7-point tip sheet from me. I'm a CMO and have sponsored many events, some digital, some real, but some tips that we've seen working for other people about how to maximize your participation. So and then after that, we'll take all of your questions. So at this point, I'll kick it over to Amelia to talk about the next few events in the SaaStr calendar.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. So for those of you who may not know me, I feel like I've emailed with a lot of you just looking at the attendee names, but I'm Amelia Barra. I'm the VP of Marketing and Plus Events and some other things here at SaaStr. So many of you, I think, have probably emailed with myself or my team. I've been to many a SaaStr event. Obviously, the world has changed a bit this year for us for 2020. So we just thought it would be nice to walk you guys through, obviously, like what we're thinking now that the world has obviously changed in the last 90 days. So a bit about us. I think most of you on this call have been a past sponsor or have talked to somebody on our team. So as you know, like the in-person events have been SaaStr's core product, if you will, for the last few years. The 2020 annual was going to be our 6th SaaStr annual. And by all means, I can tell you it would have been perfect and you all would have loved it. But, you know, being in early March, as SaaStr tries to be sort of the first B2B SaaS conference meetup of the year, we unfortunately got swept up into the wave of COVID and had to postpone, which, you know, now there's a lot of research about like any events that happened in those last sort of weeks of March were hubs for COVID. So I'm glad we all did the right thing to keep all of you guys as sponsors safe and your teams and your companies, as well as our many attendees. I think as most of you know, SaaStr has a really large international community, which, you know, has hit the international community before it hit the US. So I think we are all glad that you're all staying safe and well during these turbulent times. So what we've sort of done in the last 90 days to shift what we're doing off of in-person events, just as we are all sheltering in place and working towards a safer tomorrow, is doing what we call digital mega events. So we've hosted 2 of these already. We did the first one in April. It was called Bridging the Gap. Many of you may have attended. This was focused on what founders and SaaS CEOs and the leadership teams can do now to bridge the gap in the downturn. So this covered everything from fundraising to hiring to product marketing, and you know, VP of sales, hiring, etc. So that was Bridging the Gap. We had over 15,000 virtual attendees sign up for this. It was uber popular. We had, you know, Stuart Butterfield from Slack spoke, Megan Eisenberg from Trip Actions, and it was super well attended. And that was honestly just an experiment for us to see if people would come to a SaaStr digital event. Obviously, a lot of people are doing their own hosted webinars, online workshops, AMAs. And so we did that as a sort of an experiment to see if our core audience and our SaaStr community would want to attend something digital. And if they would even sign up, since now, you know, there is a lot of digital events, and we found, okay, people will sign up for this and they will attend if we make really good content. So then we did another one just last month, or a couple weeks ago, actually. It was called the New Venture. This one was focused primarily on CEOs who are fundraising, and we had a lot of top tier VCs. So Aileen Lee from Cowboy Ventures, you know, David Sachs from Kraft, Keith Boy from Founders Fund. And this is also very well attended and gave people the inside scoop on what's happening in fundraising right now, since obviously a lot has changed in COVID, and they're what we call COVID beneficiaries, and, you know, was sort of a trendsetter in an event of setting the landscape and the trends of what people are seeing. So that one was also well attended. So then we took the data from the two of these, which we'll go over in the next slide, and decided we'll do 2 more of these digital mega events for the next 2 quarters, and then obviously, you know, add more depending on any restrictions and how the world is of sheltering and just having and hosting safe events. So the next 2 we're going to do, which we'll talk about a lot today, because I know a lot of you are curious to hear what we're doing going forward so that you guys can participate, is we'll do 2 of these digital mega events. The first one will be SaaStr Enterprise, which we'll dive into. This is, if you guys remember, we were going to do a Cxo Summit as part of the SaaStr Annual in person this year. We are moving this to a digital mega event, which actually opens it up for more sponsors than we originally were going to have in person. But this is solely focused on, you know, the top CIOs, CXOs, and thousands of enterprise CEOs sharing how to scale specifically in the enterprise today. And that will have an exclusive networking component, which we'll dive into. And then the annual we'll host in September as a completely digital event. So annual at home, as we're calling it, will be September 2nd and 3rd. It will be our 6th SaaStr annual, just digital this year with everything going on in the world, but it'll be 2 full days. You know, we'll have a ton of workshops, a lot of mentoring sessions. Since now it's digital, we can actually run our mentoring sessions a bit longer, which is great. So that is our next schedule of events. So as we've mentioned, we've done 2 of these digital events now, and we wanted to share what we've been seeing in terms of numbers and attendee engagement from the SaaStr community, since obviously there's been this explosion of digital events and sort of how we're setting the trend amongst them. So between the 2 events we hosted in April and May, we had over 25,000 people register. We had about 47% audience engagement, and our audience is still our core audience. So many of you have seen this chart here of like our audience's role. We actually got more CEOs and founders in doing digital, so that percentage went up. I think it used to be closer to like 35, now it's 40% CEOs and founders, 22% sales and marketing. So these are like at the VP, CMO, CRO sort of level. A high percentage of investors. Obviously, as you know, the SaaStr community has VC focused content. We do a lot of VC matchmaking. So not a surprise there that we have a lot of global VCs coming now to our digital events. A lot, you know, product and ops. Obviously, these are like the operators that are out there building the products, scaling the products day to day in the weeds in the system. And then lastly, CS, because we do have some content, obviously, that's focused on customer success, net retention, etc. We did put a snapshot here of who sort of attends our events, right, now that they're digital. It's, you know, all the top SaaS companies are listed here, you know, more enterprise focused companies are listed here. So we're saying that now that it is digital, it's our core audience, but just magnified like 10x, since we can reach even more people through a digital format, which is great. And our purchasing power is still really strong. So over half of these attendees were VP level or above. So again, like VP, CMO, CEO, founder, that's our core audience now, still, even with a higher ratio of attendees than we would at an in-person event. So super strong numbers. I think it's nice to see that our core audience is being magnified through these digital events. You know, we've had several Several sponsors who participated in our last 2 digital events, since we do session registration and we have, we have such a high level of attendees, and we have everyone say what session they want to go to, there's a really high number of opt-ins. So a lot of our sponsors, which will show you like the breakdown of the numbers in just a couple moments, but a lot of our sponsors had over 4,000 opt-in registrants, which is great. You have 4,000 people registering, you have a few thousand show up for your session. That's a lot of hand raisers and a great way to replace your pipeline that you might be missing right now, since in-person events are not allowed to happen. So really great engagement there. And something we do that we'll show you guys is we live stream these out. So we live stream these out to our bigger social media audiences. Obviously, SaaStr has a really great social media following, as many of you know, so does our founder, Jason. So we simulcast out any of our digital events to our social media channels, and we have a really crazy amount of viewers tune into that as well by doing the simulcast, which I think is just added engagement and added, brand awareness for you guys, which is really a plus because we already sort of have this built-in social media audience and following. So to introduce this idea and really capitalize on what we've seen has worked for our sponsors in our past 2 events, we're introducing this concept of hyper events for our next 2 digital mega events. So this is both for SaaStr Enterprise and Annual at Home. We added hyper workshops. And this was because out of the experiments that we kind of run in our last 2 digital events, we saw that hyper workshops delivered the most value to our core sponsors and was something that they could get behind. It was turnkey, was really easy for them to do amidst, I know a lot of you are having to redo your business plans, redo your go-to-market strategy, look at your hiring plan really strategically now. Like this is something like I know like a lot of you are adjusting your Q3, Q4 plans. Like this was easy for our sponsors to understand and really get like our core audience and who we are and what we do. So this is why we added the hyper workshops, because it's really easy for you guys for sure to get the value out of it immediately. Like you'll have a date, you'll know, you have a certain number of opt-in registrants, you'll have attendees. I'll show you in a minute, but we play them on SaaStr.com after, and we continually promote them on social. So it's really good, both like day of digital content and long tail content that lives on SaaStr.com. So this is where we've seen the most value, and we had really great feedback from our current sponsors who did it on this. So we've created these hyper workshops, as we call them. We like to launch them as soon as Session Reg launches for one of our digital mega events. It's obviously really good to work with our team, have your content ready, like a really great speaker, a really great topic, which we can work with you guys on, and have it launch as soon as we launch Session Reg so that you get the most amount of opt-ins. We do launch this, a few weeks prior to the actual event so that as people are registering and momentum builds for the event itself, you can capitalize on the number of people and eyeballs who are seeing the speaker, the content, the topic, create some excitement. So we do think, getting in at the launch is the best. We have had other sponsors, who for some reason or another took their time and weren't in right at launch, and they still got a really good amount of leads, but obviously not as many as you do when you get in at the forefront. So getting them in the agenda, super important to keep in mind for these hyper workshops. They're basically a 20-minute workshop, so just 20 minutes, speaking about a subject matter that the speaker is an expert on. Again, like I said, we'll work with your team on like what our audience is really looking for in terms of like topics and content and speakers. And then we play them out, like I said, day of, and then we also put them up on our YouTube. So it gets additional views across our YouTube. We simulcast it on YouTube Live. We also write these out as blog posts following the event. So we have a set event and video schedule that I'll let Allison go over a bit, but these are really great because they get more social media impressions. This is one that Brex did from last year's annual event, but you can see it got like, not only did it get like the day of views, but it also got long tail views from being on our website.
Yeah, and I think that this as a marketer, this is incredibly valuable because the difference between, and we are in the live events business, but really a key difference is sometimes with live events, you finish your talk, one, you don't really know who's in the room, but then your talk is done and hopefully you'll get the recording in 3 to 4 weeks. With this, it's instantaneous. So we can start marketing and remarketing the content, but not only are we marketing it to our community of thousands and thousands of people all over the world, but you also have the asset to republish, remarket yourself. So you have an opportunity to capture even more views, more impressions, more leads from the content that we're working on together with you. And maybe you want Amelia, go to the next one. So this was one that Zoom did, I believe. And you can see some of the spikes in traffic there. So this was, I mean, originally they started out pretty strong, and then they continued to get very strong traffic all the way through. So, I mean, this is months of almost a full year of content here. So, and what we do with this content is not only do we promote it on channels like you know, the web or even in our social, but also it goes out to our newsletter. So if, on the next slide, I think Amelia may show. So this is Megan Eisenberg here. This was a really great talk. It was featured in the newsletter, but it was also featured on the SaaStr blog with a full write-up about what the talk was about and what are some of the key takeaways. So you know, at a high level, what we do is work with you to promote your presence for as long as we can, and frankly, that's in perpetuity. And then also are working with your team to do more with your efforts. So if you want to say, hey, we want to re-push out this piece of content because we have the launch coming up and we want to warm up the audience, just let us know. We're happy to help. This is part of why I'm here, and Caitlin, who's not speaking today, but is part of the sponsor success team. We really want to learn from digital events, experiment a bit with you, but also really maximize your participation. And this is one of the most exciting ways that we can do that. And this is just to Amelia's earlier point, every single one of these sponsors on here, I mean, they're great companies, not to take away from that, but they all started early. They all went right in the minute we launched the event and provided their content to us. So this is how many opt-in registrations they got for their session because they submitted their content as early as possible. So one note on the sponsor success point is that we are available to help you with your content, to review things as you need us to, just to get a second pair of eyes, because again, we really want you to get as many opt-in registrations as you can, because you're needing to make up a gap right now that I know you probably have, because I would be in the same boat if I were doing that. And I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, Amelia. One quick question that might come up is when are we launching, I guess, the first opportunity for content?
Yeah, so it would be July 29th, which is our SaaStr Enterprise event. That's our next digital mega event. SaaStr Enterprise, which I'll dive into right after I speak on this real quick, it's a more obviously enterprise focused event, hence the name. So it might not be the perfect fit for everyone on this call, but I do know Annual at Home is a more broader, that's like our core audience. That's a more broader fit, and we're more easily able to work with your team on the content. Not that we can't work with your team on SaaStr Enterprise for content, but we do need a higher level caliber of speaker, which if you guys can't commit, you know, your CEO's time or your CPO's time, then it might not be a good fit. But if you have you're a customer, you know, CEO, that has worked really well in the past too, for when we've done that sort of content, workshop content. So I'll dive into that next, but just as a flyer, because I know a lot of you will ask about like, what does the digital booth entail? Honestly, the real value of doing these digital mega events is in the content. Like that's where you're gonna get the most leads, the most exposure, the most eyeballs, the most hand raisers. You know, that's where you can get more of the value in the follow-up for your lead gen and pipeline. I will say, we do have and offer the digital demos as like digital booths, if you will. There's no, you know, construction or seesaws required. They're more of a digital booth where you can give your own little product demos, you know, have a live chat, have your AEs on the chat, basically speak with our attendees who are there, But again, it's there as a value, just an add-on so that you don't feel like you're missing out on having a digital booth. But what we've seen with our sponsors, and from some of our competitors who are doing digital events as well, the digital booth is, not as highly trafficked to as the workshops. Obviously, content is what's bringing people in these days, especially now. So it's sort of the flip of in-person events. I do think at in-person events, there's a lot of really cool things you could do at your booth to get people to come, but I do think for digital, it's almost the reverse, where like content is more important than the booth, whereas, in person, you're like, the booth is more important than the content. So it's a bit of a flip, but in today's day and age, we do have it so that you feel like, you can still interact with attendees who are coming, and see who could be a fit there. So that's the digital booth, but again, the content is what's more important. So to our next digital mega events, and like the first time you guys can really get it on hyper workshops. So we are doing SaaStr Enterprise. It's July 29th. So there's more than a month, and there's still time to have a hyper workshop and get in before we launch content, which will be in about the next 2 weeks. So this is focused solely around what we call the real future of work. Obviously, the future of work has changed a bit in the last 90 days. So we thought that this would be a good theme, especially with, our core audience of CEOs of top B2B companies, to see what's driving innovation in the cloud. So this is a unique event in that we're doing it in basically 2 tracks. So there's one track, which is just the content and the speakers, which anyone is open to watch. So we're assuming we'll have, thousands of registrants like we did for our last 2 events who will attend and view the content, which includes any sponsored hyper workshops. Obviously, to what I was speaking to earlier, this is one where we would really work with your team on aligning on a speaker because it is enterprise focused. So a lot of people are coming to this, and some of the topics that we already have lined up are around digital transformation, innovation in the enterprise, how to build a product for the enterprise. So again, it's very enterprise focused, and it will have top leaders from Coupa, PagerDuty, etc. I think Domo signed on today. So, some really big enterprise players will be also speaking here. So that's the one part that is open. There's also an exclusive part that we're doing that sponsors would get access to, which is our exclusive CEO Cxo networking. So this is something we were again going to do for our Cxo Summit in person back in March, but now we're doing it in a digital format. So it is curated invite-only networking that connects just the very top CEOs of our audience with the CXOs in cloud who are driving innovation. So these are, CIOs, CTOs, chief digital transformation officers that our team has reached out to, which is not typically our core audience. Our core audience obviously is like SaaS CEOs and founders. So since the CXOs are not the core audience, we did this exclusive networking just to make it, more white glove, more exclusive. Obviously, these CXOs want to meet with certain people at companies, like they want to meet with your CEO, they want to meet with your CPO, they want to meet with your CTO. They don't necessarily want to meet with your AE. So we've done this exclusive networking just to facilitate a bit more of an opt-in formula for it, so that it is really people who they want to meet and people you want to meet, and you guys can have a more like native conversation than just one that's about a straight, an AE trying to sell a product to a cold prospect. So that's SaaStr Enterprise. The next one that we'll have, obviously, many of you know, annual. This is just annual at home digitally. So this is our core audience. We'll do it 2 days digitally as a core event. We'll have both brain dates and umbrellas, and they'll be open throughout the whole week. So there'll be a lot of chances for your team, not only to get a lot of value out of the workshops, but also out of the mentorship. We've had a lot of our sponsors who, have worked with our team and really bought into the mentorship, get really great engagement and have actually closed deals that way, because they had somebody either on their marketing team or somebody who was like a subject matter expert do, either speed networking through Umbrella or do little talks through the brain date and do the mentorship there. That's actually been really great for people's deal flow. So again, more than one way to capitalize on this one, in addition to the booth, which, like I said, for me, I find that to be the third tier because I do find it more valuable to get connections from the content and the mentorship but it is there. So this will have, you know, again, a ton of VCs. We're reconfirming all the speakers that we had for SaaStr Annual, who are like, you know, the core speakers, sort of the people that you see on this page, to come back and do their sessions again. So this will be how we get to what we're targeting of 50,000 attendees. You know, we launched our last 2 digital events pretty soon, like right before we hosted them. And considering we already had over 25,000 attendees come to those 2, we're thinking, okay, well, this one's in September. We already had 15,000 people sign up, and we just launched it literally last week and have not promoted it yet. I think like I've written 1 tweet. So we're thinking by September we'll have 50,000 projected attendees or more sign up, and then, you know, a high concentration of those people come live. So this will be annual, just at home in your homes. And then I'll kick it over to Allison, who can talk a bit more about the workshops and bringing it all together.
Yeah, so as we were putting this together, we sort of grabbed the team and said, you know, what are we seeing work for the sponsors we've had so far, and what's been our experience? And so here are kind of my top tips. So we've kind of hit home, start early several times. And what I mean is, you know, when we launch Enterprise, and that will be soon, we'll start marketing it. If you're in for that, it's working with our team as soon as you can on your topic, and so that we can help you prepare and promote your session. So starting early, it's not a, you know, hey, 2 weeks before, let's talk about the booth. It's starting early because it's a great opportunity to get some pre-event marketing. And the second point is reach globally. So I saw a question in there about the global distribution of our digital audience and how that shakes out. And I'm hoping Amelia can help me answer that question because I don't have all the details right here. But from what I saw, it was obviously a lot of North America, but also Europe and parts of Asia. So reach globally is important because when you think about the growth of your company, to go global is not a small venture. And with digital events, you actually have an opportunity to start connecting with some of those attendees that are leaning into you. So thinking about what your strategy is for the next few months, or the next year, and where you are planning to expand might give you an opportunity to invite attendees to engage with you, to talk about your new office that's opening in Australia or in somewhere else in Southeast Asia. So it's just something that I was thinking about as we were putting this together. And there's currently, what we've seen from our stats, 96 countries that have tapped into SaaStr's community. The third one is probably one of the most important points, creating value-added content. What does that mean? That means that rather than just talk about how great your company is or how great your products are, and I'm sure they're all great, and I'm sure all of you all are great, but the value-added content is very pragmatic advice that you provide as a company. So I think back to Megan Eisenberg's presentation, or Patrick from ProfitWell did a great presentation for Bridging the Gap about what are some things you can do, for example, to retain your customers or be flexible in a time of pandemic. What did TripActions have to do to pivot very quickly from a world in which people are flying all over the place to, oh wow, we need to get all of our people back to the US. So it was, they were compelling because they were authentic, they had great advice, and so we highly recommend that whatever content you're creating, make it actionable and make it valuable to the attendees. The fourth point is, you know, as a marketer, when I looked at events and why I decided to sponsor events is because, one, we got thought leadership, a speaking opportunity like our hyper workshops, but we also had the opportunity to capture leads. So obviously with the registrations, that's one opportunity, but the digital booth, the virtual booths that we have, you know, Amelia said it's different than in real life because you can have a hallway conversation with someone, you can give them a tchotchke and get a drink later. Virtual events are different, but what they're like is a pervasive opportunity for you to run some of your demo videos. This is the time to show people how your product works, to set up a time to chat with you in real time about a question that they may have about your product. So think of it more as a mid-funnel opportunity. And so you may be able, with some content you've created, to capture leads. with, hey, download this, see it, come talk to us about what you thought. You know, there's probably a bunch of ideas that I'm sure you guys could come up with, but, you know, really hustle a little bit and be a little scrappy with this, because we're all experimenting, we're all learning what works. But I think there are multiple points where you can capture leads, which kind of leads me to number 5, which is 5 and 6 kind of together, which is, this is a time to experiment. Be creative. What can you do to stand out? We're promoting you on social. We're promoting you on the newsletter. We've got a virtual booth. You have a workshop. What offers or games or contests can you put out that help people interact together in a digital format? I mean, this is one of the things that most marketers like Dave Gerhardt and others have said is, you know, everyone's kind of being two-sided, it's Zoom, it's like a webinar format. Well, it could be so much more. And so this is a time where we love to help you be creative with your engagement. And also, if your team is working remotely, which I'm sure most of you are, maybe that's something that you can do with your team. Have them come up with some ideas. So we're here to help you tap into our expertise. After this call today, Caitlin and Amelia and I will be in communication with you about all the deadlines and all the opportunities to engage. And we're always here for you to be a sounding board or a creative partner as you need. So I think that's kind of, those are my like long-winded tips, but you know, I'm really excited to help you and to maybe add to this list 2 or 3 more things once we've learned how to do it really well. So with that, I think we're going to go to Q&A, which I think there are a few here. So Amelia, you're on. Okay, great. So I think one of the first questions here was around the geography. So could you maybe answer, like, how are you seeing the attendee geography shaking?
Yeah, sure. So it's a lot of what you mentioned, right? Like, obviously there's a still high concentration of people. It's not like people in tech really moved for the last 90 days. So we are seeing, right, in the way that we're seeing an amplification of our core audience, an amplification of our key geographies, which has always been, you know, the Americas. Obviously, specifically, a lot of people in tech are still in California, New York, the hubs, if you will. So those people are still there. They're just logging in via computer versus showing up in person. And then, you know, the next ones would be, you know, the APACs, the Europes, a lot of like the London hubs, Berlin, and then, you know, APAC events as well, or areas as well, I should say. So that's basically still just an amplification of our core audience.
Great. So the next question is around the content and how long we're promoting it. I'm happy to take that one and what channels. So as we pointed out before, once we get your content and, you know, we have your session, you know, it's on the site in perpetuity. So if you go to SaaStr.com right now and you look up one of the past speakers, you'll probably see multiple links for their content. So we push those out through all of our channels. And, you know, one of the things that we do for sponsors, for example, this will come through some of our communications, is if, let's say you're doing a product launch around the time of SaaStr Annual, and that's going to be maybe some capacity, it's featured in one of your workshops, then, you know, get us that content. We can help promote that on social before the event, after, during. So every sponsor will have a level of social promotion in addition to what we're already doing. But, you know, the short answer is, as you saw with the Zoom example, that was almost a year of promotion. That was on the site, and then we would resurface the content as it was relevant to some of the discussions we were having in our community.
Yeah, so quantifiably, right? Like the first time you guys participate in an event, it's obviously heavier promotion right when the content comes out. So post-event, you know, we share it as a YouTube video first, and then we do post 1 per week on SaaStr.com. So, you know, depending on how many sessions there were from our particular digital event, we'll have like a set calendar of like 1 video will come out as a blog post per week. So when that blog post comes out is the week that it's also promoted in the newsletter once. And then after that, right, we do ongoing social media promotion. So at the start, it's like one on each channel. And then afterwards, it's like multiple times. It's just depending on what's relevant to today's topics, popularity. You know, we do a lot of data-driven posting on our social media, so we see what's working. And then, yeah, that's how, you know, Brex and Zoom ended up with an additional 5,000, 3,000 views, because we just continually promote this content. But it is obviously more at the start, and then long wind, it's just, it goes into our evergreen queue of content that's promoted.
There was a question as well on how, you know, with the digital booth, how to get more traffic. And so that's a, you know, it's a great question, because I think it forces us to think shift our thinking a little bit about what a booth means. And so as a sponsor, you have a workshop. So one idea would be you have your workshop talk, and then you say, at our booth from this time to this time, we'll have the CEO here to answer your questions. You can do some chat. You can say, oh, at 2 o'clock, we have this, we have the winners of this contest. Like, it's really about kind of promoting what you have at your booth and giving people reasons to go. This is something that we're still brainstorming a little bit on. And so over the course of the time between now and the time of the event, we'll definitely be following up to provide some creative tips based on the how we know we can engage with the platform that we're using. So a little bit more to come on that end.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all for our questions. I hope this was helpful for you guys, especially, you know, we'd love to hear your feedback, you know, reach out to myself or the team. I'm just Amelia at SaaStr Inc. You can literally email me whenever.
There's actually on the next slide, I think there's,
oh, is it an email?
There's the email, there's that.
Then there's some quotes, some good social proof that we got from our first 2 digital events, and we'll send you guys this deck. Yeah, you can email me, or you can email sponsor success at SaaStr Inc. But either way, we'll read it. You know, again, this is something that we experimented with for our first 2 digital mega events, and now that we're going full force on them, yeah, always open to hearing feedback and suggestions. I know we're talking to a lot of you already about this, and how to make it a more value add for you. But like we said, you know, working with our team on the content is usually the best way, because we know our audience. This is our audience and our community that we serve every day. So usually that works a bit better. But thanks guys for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions in the meantime. And we hope we can see you at one of our digital events upcoming.